Our first speaker online is Mr. Jared Nicol.
Hello.
Mr. Nicol, as mentioned, you have 3 minutes to speak. A bell at 2.5 minutes. Please let us know the agenda item you're speaking to, and your time starts now.
Okay, I'm speaking on road maintenance, and I'd like to thank Councillor Grundy for asking this question. In early 2022, Phil Hanson wrote to me saying that Marumba Road was considered a Category 10 road and no approval is required from council for maintenance work to be undertaken. I understand that other residents who live on Category 10 roads have been given the same blanket consent. Since that time, council have claimed that each resident needs to complete a Section 134 form, provide insurance and a traffic management plan each time they need to undertake maintenance on council's road. In November last year, I wrote to CEO Rebecca Ryan asking that she inform the residents that have been given blanket consent of the new requirement, and she responded that if somebody seeks approval, they will be directed to the Section 138 form. This response isn't reflective of good governance. Over the past 2 years, I have been told that I can maintain the road without approval, that I need to complete a Section 138 request, that council would be writing a residents' maintenance guide, that the guide would actually be a new policy, that I need to complete a Section 138 request, that I cannot complete a Section 138 request until council pass a new policy, that I need to complete a Section 138 request. In the end, I downloaded the Section 138 form and tried to complete it. Unable to answer most of the questions, I asked council staff how to answer 5 of the questions. That was 6 months ago, and I still don't have a response despite several follow-ups. To this day, nobody knows what the fees are for me to maintain council's road. The road needs to be maintained. I don't think it's legal for a resident to maintain a public road. The New South Wales Minister for Roads has confirmed that residents can't maintain a public road. It is clear that council staff want residents to maintain their roads on a don't ask, don't tell basis off the books. It is a criminal offence under the Roads Act to work on a public road without the authority required by the Act. It is a complete failure of governance to give residents blanket consent to maintain a road, realise that isn't legal, not withdraw the consent, then expect residents to know that they have to apply with a form that nobody within the council can tell them how to complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nicol. 10.4, response to questions with notice, maintenance of roads. I'll look for a mover for that. Councillor Grundy, seconded Councillor McDonald. Any speakers on that motion? Thank you, Councillor Grundy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, this was very helpful, the answer to these questions, and it may be appear quite straightforward, but I've had some approaches from some members of the community that are affected by Cat 10 roads, and we heard from 2 speakers tonight on those roads. So I guess what I've taken from the answers is that there are perhaps more questions to ask. It's my understanding that there are some residents maintaining their roads, but they're doing that without an S138 approval or application. And it's my understanding under the Roads Act that unless that approval is granted, then it's not legal for anyone to maintain or touch a public road. In fact, my understanding is there are only 3 categories of people, individuals that can maintain or interfere with in any way public roads, and that is councils, that is those agents of councils and contractors. So residents are obviously not in that group. So it would seem that, yes, they should be applying for and receiving approval under S138. But question 2 clearly indicates that residents are not doing that we have quite a number of these Cat 10 roads. We don't know how many residents might be doing this, and it appears that they are doing this unwittingly and in doing so performing a criminal act under the Roads Act. I guess in summary, I'm looking at there are 40 roads categorised as 10, and these are unmaintained roads. As I said, there's no, from what we can gather, S138 approvals. During the presentation, Mr. Nicol alleged a number of, made a number of allegations about what he was told. So there does seem to be some confusion and contradiction there with residents. I guess could I ask, is it the case that there are residents maintaining these Category 10 roads without S138 approval?
Ms. Ryan? Mr. Cunningham.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, I might comment from a historical view as well in my experience in a previous life with Pallaring. It is true, people do, but it's in various degrees. Sometimes it can be, most often, it's to do with people taking out a bucket of sand or a bucket of gravel. Often it's bricks, to potholes and that sort of thing. And indeed, the Crown takes the view, they actually take the view of kind of levels of maintenance. They'll tolerate a level of maintenance that will be like someone just doing a bit of pothole patching. Very rarely have I seen where somebody engages a fully fledged grading crew to go out and do it because the cost of it is just too much. The other thing is too, people often talk about maintenance on gravel on Category 10 roads as just a matter of putting a grader on it. Normally they're Category 10 roads because they have no gravel. And the worst thing you can do to a road that's unformed, that's got no gravel, is to go out and grade it because it becomes impassable. So to go to your question, are people doing it? Undoubtedly. It can even be lopping a tree. That's work on a public road. So all of these things require Section 138, and Mr. Hanson's report clearly refers to all the applications we get, and almost invariably they're not to do with road maintenance as we're talking about. It's to do a post or to do something in the road reserve. So, yes, it happens, probably not to the extent that's really the topic here, full-grown maintenance. Often it's very, very minimal maintenance, but that does happen.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Can I ask then, have we, anticipating that the ideal situation, and in fact the law requires, if we're going to take it to the T, that S138 approvals are required, have we in fact instructed residents that will be affected on these 40 roads that they are in fact in that category, that they are looking at unmaintained roads by council, and that they are required to do an S138 if they are to maintain the road? Have we informed those residents of those requirements?
Mr. Cunningham.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I probably can't give you a definitive answer on that. It's probably, the answer is probably not as a blanket to those living on Category 10. Often Category 10 roads can just turn up organically. For example, a portion might have a building entitlement at the end of an unformed road, and they exercise their right to put a building entitlement on it and a building on it, and all of a sudden they've got an access problem, and that's why it's a Category 10 road. So I don't think I can say to you categorically that everyone's been informed. In fact, I'm almost certain that they blanket wouldn't have that sort of information go out.
So I guess my concern then is I looked recently, and I know we have a grading policy which identifies Category 10 roads, and then there's an explanation against them that they are unmaintained by council. But we technically don't, as far as I could find anyway, have a policy on how we deal with Category 10 roads and residents, if you like, obligations. And surely that's something we should be looking at in order to make it very clear to those residents their obligations in terms of S138 approval. And surely as councillors, we should be looking at this matter in terms of good governance, that it is a bit of it leaves it open that if something occurs on one of these roads, that if an individual in fact unwittingly employs someone to do some works there and there is perhaps some injury, even a death, then legally I'm not sure where we stand. I know the requirement technically is that these residents need S138 approval, but if we're not requiring them to get that, then that puts us in a very difficult position as councillors, and I think questions our responsibilities under good governance. So I'd be asking for a policy to be developed to clarify for these residents what their obligations are, and in fact what Category 10 unmaintained roads represent, because we don't have a policy. We don't have a policy anywhere. We have a grading schedule and a policy on grading which identifies a Category 10 as being unmaintained, but there's no then follow-on as to what that means for residents and their obligations or council's expectations of them. So this is something I think we need to follow up if we as councillors are to be responsible in maintaining a level of good governance.
Thank you, Councillor Grundy. Before I pass to Councillor McDonald, I just have a question. Do we not have an unsealed road grading policy? Ms. Ryan.
Through you, Mr Chair, yes, Council last adopted the unsealed road grading policy in October 2022, so this current Council adopted it. It refers to the Roads Act 1993 as legislative obligations and or relevant standards, and it talks about Category 10 roads not being maintained. That's Council's opportunity if they wish to remove Category 10 roads, and as I think as Mr Cunningham has identifying or quantifying exactly, those unmaintained roads is actually a big task as it is. There's numbers listed in the response to the questions, but I don't think that's actually, we know that that's not the end of the quantum of it. So there is a policy. There is a policy about unmaintained roads, and then it refers to the Roads Act.
Councillor Grundy.
If I may, with your indulgence, Mr Chair, I didn't suggest there wasn't a policy on grading of Category 10 roads. What I was suggesting is the next step. We don't have a category that explains what a Category 10 unmaintained road means for residents. There is nowhere written that a resident on a Category 10 road understands that they are obliged to apply and have approved an S138 under the Roads Act. And if they go ahead and do anything, technically, they are committing a criminal offence. And that's where I think there's something we need to do to clean up that area that currently, yes, there is a policy on grading, but road maintenance is so much more than grading. What do these residents do if there's something wrong with a culvert, or if they have some sort of bridge that gives way or has some issue with structural integrity? The grading policy won't help them there. That's my point.
on Delta, I think the best way forward on this would be for Councillor Grundy to actually put a motion together for a future meeting.
I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grundy. Councillor McDonald, as seconder. Nothing further. Any other speakers on this? Councillor Wilson.
I just, across the debate and the public contribution, there's been a lot of it. Almost, I feel like council's been attacked for our incompetency. Mr. Hanson said this. I don't like the naming of staff as a policy. By the way, I think it's better to say council advised X and Y. I don't think council's advised anyone to break the law. I wouldn't mind. I'll give the opportunity, but my question is: there anything that staff would like to put on the public record against some of the public contributions being made tonight in relation to this? Saying that, I'm not saying we don't need to possibly tidy this up, but yeah.
Ms. Ryan.
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify there's been no criminal action sought and or taken by QPRC or any of its residents.
Thank you.
Any further comments on this? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That is unanimous and carried.